From what we see, the Maiduguri street is begging. Its begging crisis reflects both the scars of conflict and the pressures of poverty. The challenge is not only humanitarian, but also one that one would say, needs is a test of urban order and social stability if left unchecked. And so, to explore this further, we're joined by our correspondent who filed in the report, Umaru Kirawa, who's pretty much spoken to all stakeholders, from the beggars as well as the persons living with disability, plus the stakeholders and the governance as well. So Umaru, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate you for coming on. You have been there. You brought us that report, and so I do have to ask you, in terms of tracking the story closely, what struck you the most engaging with the beggars? Is it that the government has still not found a lasting solution, or the solutions that they're finding do not meet their own needs?
Well, first, the situation of street begging is a national problem, so to speak. And this case in Borno State, I think it's not enough to give the street beggars or persons living with disability fish. It's not sustainable. I mean, the government really need to work out modalities of empowering them, teaching them some soft and hard skills that they can earn a means of livelihood by themselves. For instance, there are so many types of trades that the government can really engage, since the government has already established some vocational training centers across different parts of the state. These persons living with disability and, of course, the street beggars can be engaged in these vocational training centers in different trades of maybe tailoring and fashion design, carpentry and welding and fabrication, food and nutrition. I mean, different type of trades that they can earn a means of survival. And instead of giving them that monthly stipend of 30,000 or 20,000 naira, that money can be accumulated. At the end of the day, they can be given as a startup capital and then some kits in which they can earn a means of survival. Indirectly, the issue of street begging will be addressed, and sustainably, these persons that are begging will have a means of survival. Like one of the street beggars said, she's tired of the street begging because in a day she hardly earns 600 naira, and that 600 naira cannot even buy food and cater for some of our needs and that of our children. As such, empowering them, giving them a means of survival, I think is one of the sustainable means and practical solution to this multifaceted problem that is sort of a time bomb.
All right.
Now, Kirawa, a very interesting suggestion. They're very noble as well when you say accumulate that money and use it for something developmental for these people. However, even if you give them these nets, fishing nets, instead of the fish, don't you need to educate them? Because there's only so much you can give a person who's not used to handling such equipment, or maybe monies, that they would be able to use it properly. How about reorientation? How about, some sort of education so they can find their feet? I don't know what your take is on that.
Well, that should be part of the vocational training, educating them, telling them, discouraging them from street begging. I can remember the Commissioner of Poverty Alleviation, when we were asking him with regard to the issue, he said some of the beggars are even richer than you people. So you are just sympathizing with them. But the situation goes beyond that. The government really need to work out modalities, like I've said, vocational training and skills is critical. Industrialize them. We need to work towards that, because these people mostly...
I hear that, Kirawa, but then another question is really the origin of these beggars. Has there been any authority who's tried to find out where they're from? Are these internally displaced people who are running away from insurgents from inside of the state or maybe even outside the state? Is there any data to show who they are?
Well, the state government, like the Commissioner for Poverty Alleviation, Saina Buba, said, they have started, at the initial stage, the government has started profiling the persons living with disability and even the beggars when the government banned street begging. Unfortunately, a large chunk of the people are not from Borno. They are coming from communities and states, in different states across northern Nigeria, some in Yobe, some in Far Sokoto and other states. And that is why I said it's a national problem that requires a whole lot of practical solution in which the state governors across different parts of the country should come out.
We seem to be having issues with Kirawa's audio there. If we can just try to fix it. Umaru, just be on standby very quickly for us because we're about to bring in our second guest. Also joining us is a public affairs analyst, Ibrahim Amarawa. He joins us, Amarawa, I beg your pardon. He joins us live as well. Ibrahim, it's good to have you and good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on. So there's something that Umaru just said before he went off, and that was that the beggars, we have to bear in mind that the beggars oftentimes are not from the state. They're not indigents or residents of that state, right? And we know that there's a rising insecurity in the north, whether in Plateau or even in the outskirts of Borno or border towns in Nasarawa. We've seen the surge of insecurity, and that means displacement of people. So where does documenting lie? How do we know these people? You know, because I feel like a better documentation of them, their names, their vocation, what they used to do before they were displaced, can also aid in reintegrating them back into the society.
Okay, thank you very much. Street begging, especially among the children, is a big problem. And when you talk about identifying them, reintegrating them back to their ancestral homes, the situation is not peculiar to only those who are coming to the state. As you know, this is a normal practice in northern Nigeria where parents send their children to many states in the search of Quranic education. But here in Borno State, we have complex situations. There are some who are displaced by the recurrent or the ongoing insurgency. Some are pushed to the streets because of the extreme poverty that lingering in northern Nigeria, as we all know, is obvious. And others may be displaced by the natural disaster, flooding, and so on and so forth. So there are so many issues that escalating the situation. But as you know, northern Nigeria are largely agrarian communities. As you can see in northwest, we have banditry that are pushing people out from their farms. Here we have insurgency and also weak governance, lack of social amenities, which resulted to rural-urban migration, which is a very big problem that nobody is doing anything about it. Rural-urban migration is a result of lack of social amenities in the rural areas. Mm-hmm. Because if there's social or adequate social amenities in the rural areas, people from villages, they have no business in the city because they don't used to eat. They are used to their farming, trading among the many communities in their environment. But as a result of lack of adequate social amenities, push them out of their villages to come to the cities in search of greener pastures, especially among the parents. Living in the city is not an easy task, so the parents failed to meet up their responsibilities. Mm-hmm. That's why some children are not even going out. Some children are going out without the knowledge of their parent. If you stop them on the street and ask them where are their parents, they'll tell you, my father is so, my father is doing so.
But Ibrahim,
yes.
Noting what you're saying about the kinds of people that are out there on the streets, from beggars who are, hit hard by the economy, what about profiling them? Do you think that profiling them, getting to know who they are, where they are from, would help the situation?
Yes, that's the issue.
And whose responsibility should it be?
Lie on government. You know, having social data is another issue that we are lacking in this country. It will be difficult even for the government to identify all of these children on the street begging because there's no adequate data to rely on. As I heard from our colleague, he's saying some street beggars are not from the state. Yes, And the government is giving raw data always about 1.8 million out of school children. And some of them, yes, are not from the state, but profiling them is a huge tax, which I don't think the government even started, because we don't have a system where we will know who is coming to the state, who is from one particular local government or the other. You understand? But I think if the government will try to start profiling them, it will be a very good solution. So they give them avenue to plan. Okay. If you don't plan, it's like you plan to fail. So okay. I think the government should start doing something on time in regards to capturing data of the street children to know who are from the state, who are coming in, and what are on ground to cater for them.
All right, then, Ibrahim. Thank you, Ibrahim. Umaru, let's come back to you. In the course of gathering this report, I wanted to know what you heard from the residents of Maiduguri. Are they empathizing with these beggars? Are they saying, oh, it's just out of the situation of Nigeria? Do they relate to their frustration, or are they complaining about their presence on the streets?
Of mixed reaction. Some people sympathize with them, while others are not really happy with what is happening. Some people are even scared of them because of the situation they find themselves. And these are situations that normally nobody is immune to it unless God save you in this country. As such, there is really the need for a multifaceted approach, an early approach. This should serve as an early warning so that this issue will not escalate into a time bomb, like I've earlier said, that will consume all of us.
Umaru, we know that in the north, the predominant religion there is Islam, and one of the tenets of Islam is almsgiving. And so one can look at, that, not saying that it's a contributing factor, but we know that it's a social-cultural thing that is in the north. How does that, what is the intersection between, almsgiving, the social-cultural issues in the north, and seeing these numbers? Is there, given these factors that I've named out, do you think that it is out of hands for governance to really and truly, create a long-term systemic solution?
Well, it is not out of hand per se. In fact, there's an Islamic system of zakat. It's a process which the commissioner talked about. It's a 2.5% of your saving that you usually give to vulnerable persons, and vulnerable persons have been classified: persons living with disability, the poor, the indigent, and so on and so forth. As such, the Islamic way of addressing this crisis is very well clear, but unfortunately, people are not abiding by the religious tenets, by the religious prescriptions of addressing this crisis. And of course, even the beggars too. There are procedures, there are processes in which you engage in this type of act, not serving as nuisance or problem to the community or society. Unfortunately, even those that are opportune, like you said, zakat is one pillar, is one of the pillars of Islam, and mostly, hardly some give this zakat, which is mandatory charity prescribed by the Islamic belief on Muslims that have reached the nisab level of given zakat. That is 2.5% of their savings. Unfortunately, this is not happening, and the government really need to work out modalities, even if it means maybe going with the Islamic system, or working out a neutral system whereby, since Nigeria is a country that has Christians, has Muslims, and so on and so forth, and some of the beggars could be Muslims, some of them could be Christians. As such, there is the need for a unified means in which this street begging can be addressed, and charity should also be done in a professional, in a manner that is humane, that will respect human rights, and there will be no any rancor. Like the Commissioner for Poverty said that the government is planning to establish zakat centers, 4 different zakat centers across Maiduguri metropolis in different centers, whereby the government will ensure that people that are willing to give charity will go there and then donate. And then later in the evening, the people that are vulnerable and the indigent, those monies or those things will be shared with them accordingly.
Right.
I believe it's doable.
Right. Let me turn to you, Ibrahim, and ask this question, because we're still talking about social cultural issues. If we look at the federal level, because I want to take it away from the states and look at federal level, one of the presidents who have, in his time, I mean, if memory serves me well, was very, very, very intentional about the North was Goodluck Jonathan, and he did that with the I forgot the name of the schools now. But it was the schools that was also, I think it was Islamia. Al-Majri schools, there we go. So it was a merger of Islamia and also Boko schools as well, where they were teaching in English language and Arabic, and it was scattered across the North. We also saw subsidizing of healthcare and primary healthcare centers was amplified in the North, so that we don't see people who are leaving with. Can you hear me, Ibrahim?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you clearly.
So with all of that put in place, how can the federal? Do you think that the federal have carried on with that legacy, or have they, reduced from that?
Okay, thank you very much. As you mentioned earlier, the effort made by the former President Goodluck Jonathan in regards to creation of Quranic schools in northern Nigeria, yes, it was a good effort, but even that time, the effort lacked stakeholders' engagement in regards to how such school will alleviate the proliferation of street begging. And I saw that during the Jonathan as just a political campaign, because the problem is so huge to the extent that required all stakeholders to come on board. Because as you know, primary education is the responsibility of the local government. And the local government is supposed to be part of design of any program regards to take up the street children on the street. And again, this administration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu came up with the idea of creation commission for Sangaya. But the reality is this: the federal, state, and local government needs to come together, sit down, and come up with the modalities that first to address social problem, because people need to know that if you give birth to the children, you are responsible of taking care of that child, not government. Government is not taking care of all the families. Government is providing social services such as education, health, and so on and so forth. But taking good care of children is the responsibility of parents that need to meet up their responsibilities. And another factor that we failed to talk about is economic factor. Some parents have no option because they are battling with 3 square meals. So
Ibrahim,
talking about education.
Ibrahim, just a second. I don't want you, if you can hear me, I don't want you to go too far, right? Because I want to just dissect some of the factors that you just raised. One of them was that you said that those measures were not, it didn't bring in stakeholders. And so for that reason, it didn't work so well, and that it was politically motivated. Would you say the same about the conditional cash transfer that the late Muhammadu Buhari did as well? Because it was predominantly in the North, and the social register, from what we heard and from what reports were said from the presidency at the time, was that recipients of the conditional cash transfers were predominantly in the North and was the poorest of the poor, to quote them directly. Then secondly, you talked about the children and childbirth. Goodluck Jonathan's time also did try to push for a one-child policy, which was quickly shut down by the North as well, saying that you cannot choose, you cannot predict or detect, the law cannot detect for people in a democratic election or in a democratic system how many children they ought to raise. And he complained, I remember the presidency at the time, complained about the population issue and how it was fueling the poverty rate in the North. So with those two, is it still political? Would you say that cash transfer, social cash transfer was political, and that the one-child policy was also not engaging stakeholders?
Yes, let me say yes and no at the same time.
All right,
If
go
you
ahead.
look at that issue of cash transfer, it's just to alleviate, not to eradicate the issue. And just look at the amount. The conditional cash transfer is ranging from 10,000, 50,000, which is just to alleviate some problems that poor, vulnerable people that were in. But the reality is, if the government failed to address economic problems, that issue will still persist. And coming back to the issue of one child birth or child spacing or whatever we may call it, and there are so many Western countries that they don't have such laws, but people are not giving birth to so many children because they know that it's their responsibility to take care of them. So if you bring the all issue together, it's all lies on a good educational system. If we have social amenities, you don't have to tell people how many because they know that they don't have to pay for school fees, they don't have to pay for health. So they know that I think it's good to have many children because they can go to farm, they can do this to take care of them. But in the issue where there's no access to farming, the economy is poor. Even if you have one child, you'll be suffer to take care of that child.
Well, Mr. Ibrahim Amarawa and also Umaru Kirawa, I want to say thank you very much for coming on and having this conversation with us. We are well pleased that you guys have joined. Thank you indeed.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.